So we're continuing on now with episode 3 of Be Healed, and we're going to kind of cover pages 9 through 24, hopefully, in this.
Yes.
So, Lisa, what is healing?
It's the process of being made whole, body, soul, and spirit. It's a restoration of our communion with God and an integration and reconciliation with those around us.
Yeah, and so when we see healing in the scriptures, right, it's designed to save, to cure, to make whole, to repair a breach, to restore communion, to give a therapeutic remedy, and much often deeper than any physical healing that we might desire or receive.
Yes. And we do have a built-in desire for healing. It's essential to the Christian faith, and it's why Jesus came. It was for this purpose, to restore us to wholeness and to bring us into full communion with the Father and each other.
Yeah, we have to know how tender the compassion is of God the Father, right?
Yes.
And this is expressed in many of the healings that Jesus did, right, when he walked on this earth.
And in the prodigal son.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There's this intimate concern for each of us in our brokenness and in our suffering.
Yes. And Pope Benedict the 16th said that healing expresses the entire content of our redemption.
That's a pretty powerful statement right there. That healing expresses the entire content of our redemption. What does that mean to you, Lisa?
I don't know. That's pretty... it just makes me think of reconciliation and like forgiveness, and how that restores us in communion with God, and how that's where we see the tender compassion and mercy of the Father.
In the tender compassion of our God, the dawn from on high will break upon us to shine on those who dwell in darkness and the shadows of death. Right? That's really cool stuff. I think of salvation, right? Our salvation, our ability to be with God for all of eternity, right? And the beatific vision is the greatest healing that any of us will receive, right? To be face to face with God. Look, when we need Jesus' help, okay, we have to give him our consent in our cooperation.
Right. And often we don't even realize that we need healing or how deeply we might need it because we're blinded by pride. But we all share a common brokenness.
We do, and especially, like, I think one of the ways that you'll see in spiritual mentorship is that so often the wounds that we have that need to be healed, they come from loved ones in a variety of different shapes and forms.
Right. And then we, as a result, feel like we can't trust our heart to anyone.
Yeah, we can't. Trusting God can be severely wounded. So we lose. Why did God let this happen?
Right.
Right.
Well, and I think sometimes it's because like the people on earth who we think maybe like love us the most, and then they hurt us, like then like, okay, well, if they're hurting me, then like God must do the same thing.
Well, that's an interesting way of looking at it as well. I mean, a lot of times we want to bury our inner pain and our brokenness, and you will see this a lot in spiritual mentoring. Okay, that people will bury things so much that they are no longer aware that they exist. Or when they come to you, they've got to a point where they're ready to deal with it, but they don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah. And I think sometimes there's even a fear of sharing it with a spiritual mentor. So that would be where like the whole developing trusting relationship comes in.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like a fear of losing control might be one that you would think of, but so often people want to control things that they have no control over, and that in and of itself creates a lot of angst inside of our souls.
I think fear of losing control of like emotions, maybe,
or just even control of the outcomes of things, or how you want things to be, how you perceive things ought to be happening. So often the way other people should be, those people that have hurt us, is so very different than what's logical. Right. And so you're dealing with something that's not logical.
Right.
And so you start to turn to yourself and go, well, why does it have to be this way? This person should change. They should say they're sorry. Why don't they know how they're making me feel? Notice all of these are internal conversations where you need to turn to God,
Right.
right? And let him have control over all of these things.
Yeah. And then there's also the fear of being hurt again. And so then we go into like self-protection mode.
Oh yeah. So if we can, and this is, so like we put on mask, right? We can emotionally insulate ourselves. That way it keeps the hurts buried. We are sufficient on ourselves. We're relying on ourselves. People, you will hear this all the time in spiritual mentorship. Not a good thing.
Yes.
Okay. Notice once again, this is all looking inward. This is all self. This is all protecting myself from being hurt. You need to invite Jesus into this.
Yes. And that's when the healing from the wounds begins.
I like this first one. Learn to receive. I
Yes.
just said this to someone. I think I said it to 2 people in the last 24 hours.
Okay.
I said, you just have to learn how to receive. Just, I like, whether it's prayer, like we talked about, prayer a couple of months ago. It's like, okay, you need to learn how to receive in prayer, but you also need to learn how to receive in allowing those areas of woundedness and hurt and brokenness to be healed by Jesus, to invite him in, if you will, to those things.
Yes. And we learn to allow the Holy Spirit access to our heart.
Right. And we don't want to hold any of our heart back.
Right.
And we want to share honestly and openly, and to be the V word, Lisa.
Vulnerable.
Right. Because if we're not vulnerable, it means we're still holding back a part of our heart.
Yes.
Probably because of shame or hurt or whatever the case may be, right? It's important to know that intimacy with Jesus is important, and that he is a co-laborer in everything it is that we're going through.
Yes, he's doing the heavy lifting.
Thanks goodness that he is doing the heavy lifting.
Yes.
Any final words or takeaway question?
Where do you need to allow Jesus into the wounds?
There you go. I'm Deacon Dave.
I'm the person Lisa.
See ya.
Bye.
I didn't think it was funny. That was a good question.